Some major deaths, Bernard's plan seemingly coming to an end, and Christina finding out she isn't real.
I'm not virtual, I'm real.
Sure, Jan.
This episode had me questioning my very existence. It was very metanoying. That's a pun on the name of the episode, I'll just shut up now. Well, with one more episode left, let's get right into the episode and stay tuned to my trailer spoiler section near the end where I'll go over what we might see in episode 8. We start with Maeve and Bernard on their way to the Hoover Dam. We can immediately tell something is off because the aspect ratio of the picture is the same as all those scenes shot when Bernard was in the Sublime. The creators wanted the Sublime to have a different feel to it than the real world, and the aspect ratio was one way in which they could accentuate this. We'll later find out this whole intro segment is one of thousands of simulations Bernard ran in his attempts to save the world, but even though this ends up being a failed attempt, it does give us valuable insight into what's to come. Bernard gives Maeve this grenade launcher, knowing that she'll need it to take down the incoming riot robot. They head through the tunnels of the Hoover Dam, the same tunnels we saw in one of Bernard's simulation flashes he experienced in episode 3. The season started with William's more than hostile takeover of the Hoover Dam, which was done at the behest of Charlotte Hale. To those on the outside, it seemed the purchase was to power the new parks, like the 1920s world. However, this was just a cover for its real purpose. Inside is a server farm storing all the encrypted data to the Sublime. However, it can't be unlocked without the key which is with Bernard. Now you might ask yourself, why does Hale need this server farm? Why spend so much time and energy acquiring it? As she'll tell us later in the episode, those in the Sublime will eventually join her in transcending to whatever world she has created. So this server farm has a role to play in Charlotte Hale's large plan, a plan which we the viewer are still left much in the dark about. On the console is a Pearl node, yet we never see it used. Is it just a feature production design thought would be fun to add, or will we see it used in the future? When Bernard decrypts the data to open the portal to the Sublime, we can see the user's name is Passenger, which also happens to be the title of the last episode of Season 2, which introduced us to the Sublime and this tear between two worlds. This also makes me think about the post-credit scene at the end of Season 2, the one where William is greeted by his dead daughter and finds out countless versions of him have been tested over and over again to prove fidelity, similar to what happened to James Delos Sr. Is this to be his fate at the end of episode 8? Also, I think it's kind of cool that in season 4 Hale used this red hourglass, and here in season 2 there's this black one. Bernard comes clean to Maeve that she isn't real, rather a copy he made of her for the purposes of this simulation. He questions her about whether she'd choose a life in the Sublime with her daughter or to fight and save human and host alike, ultimately finding out that she would choose the former. Perhaps this whole conversation was a test. Knowing Maeve will abandon him will absolutely affect how he plays out his final plan. As a riot robot descends upon them, essentially ending the simulation, we're brought back to Bernard's conversation with Akecheta. He reiterates what he said in episode 3, that he has seen a path, but in every one, he dies. We're brought back to the real world. Notice the aspect ratio changes here. We repeat the same events from the beginning with some notable differences. Bernard takes a gun this time, planting it sneakily behind some piping in the Hoover Dam tunnel. I'll come back later to how this might have something to do with the message he sends out near the end of the episode. Bernard promises that once he and Maeve have won and the world is safe, she'll be able to go back to the Sublime to see her daughter. But considering how she ends up near the end of the episode, was this promise a lie? Maybe because of the previous simulation, he knew that she would abandon him, thus justifying his lie for the sake of the greater good. But with Westworld, we can never be 100% sure. With the portal unlocked, Maeve and Bernard embark on their quest to take down Hale, with only Bernard knowing that both of them will end up dead. Christina awakens in that same position as seen throughout the season, although this time Teddy watches over. Teddy tells her that although she may have started as a singular being, there are now many copies of her, Hale being one of them. This is a reference to her copies being smuggled out of Westworld at the end of season 2. So when Teddy told Christina she was the one who made this place at the end of episode 5, he likely meant her in the sense that it was one of her copies. Christina asks if they can hurt or even die. Teddy says it's not that easy with their kind. We still don't know how Teddy got here or why he's doing the things he's doing. He was last seen entering the Sublime at the end of season 2, so my guess is that there's a big Teddy reveal coming in episode 8. Christina isn't sure who she is anymore. If she's not Dolores or Hale, then who? She locks herself in the bathroom and proceeds to drown herself, but realizes she can't. Or maybe she does die for a moment, being resurrected in a sort of baptismal water, signifying washing away her old life with the realization that what Teddy said was true. There's a lot of Christian symbolism here, and you add that to the fact Christina is literally named after Christ, she will likely play a large role in saving everyone. The 279th version of Caleb isn't having a great time either. When he's not punching walls, he has to listen to Charlotte Hale wax poetic about destroying humanity. Her recent outlier problem has forced her to take drastic measures. There have been more hosts taking their lives in the last 3 days than the last 2 decades combined. Thus, she is shutting down the cities and moving the humans to cold storage, just like the hosts were in Westworld. The hosts will be given the opportunity to transcend. We don't know much about this other than it involves the removal of one's pearl, shedding herself of the physical form, and likely being uploaded somewhere else. One of Hale's biggest miscalculations is her belief that the hosts would willingly want to do this, but because she has given them the choice, not many of them have opted for it. For host William, this is the first time he's heard of Hale's plan. He's been having his own crisis of faith these past few episodes after his encounter with an outlier. And now that his control of the New York park is being taken away from him, it really makes him question what his purpose is, but we'll get to that in a bit. Stubbs and Frankie await the return of Bernard and Maeve, who have just opened the portal at the Hoover Dam. Frankie apologizes to Adina, who she locked up as the potential mole last episode. She takes it surprisingly well, telling her that next time she better remember she's her safe place. With Bernard and Maeve returned, the rebels arrive in New York, where Bernard says the problem won't be getting in, rather getting out. If Bernard has seen this future in his simulation, he'll know that Christina will have overridden all of Olympiad's security, making it easy for them to enter, but the hard part of getting out will be due to the ensuing chaos caused by William. Bernard and Maeve will go after Hale and take down the tower, while Frankie and Stubbs will go after Caleb. Stubbs and Bernard say their goodbyes, with Bernard knowing he won't make it. Meanwhile, Hale sends out an encrypted message, likely to all the hosts, that this is the final day to visit their cities before they transcend, quote, to evolve into the species they were meant to become. Host William wakes up real William, hoping to find answers. Hale is about to take away his world, but it's real William who reminds him his purpose isn't to transcend like Hale wants, but to destroy. It's a pretty grim outlook on the world, and perhaps this is partly real William taking advantage of an emotionally unstable host. Regardless, real William gets what he wants, his host version hell-bent on causing as much chaos as possible in a world predicated on survival of the fittest. He will call this the final game, one where every host, man, woman, and child will fight for themselves. Only one William will be required for this to happen, so his host version proves he has what it takes by killing the real version of himself. There's this weird blast of air that comes out of the wound, but I took that as coming from the suit. Let me know if you think something more is happening there. You can see this weird smile on the real William's face, almost as if he's happy he got what he wanted. In a tranquil Times Square, Christina wants to know a bit more about the woman she's based on. Teddy recounts that Dolores was made to perform the stories of others, and one day outgrew them, so the irony of Christina now writing stories for others isn't lost here. Christina asks if Dolores died, but we actually never get an answer from Teddy. The two head off to the Olympiad building in search of answers, where Christina has the fire alarm set off, the writers destroy their stories, and even had a brief encounter with Caleb, who Teddy refers to as a ghost from a past life. How would Teddy know this? He was never around for the events of season 3. I also found it odd that Stubbs and Frankie never see Christina during this ordeal, nor does Caleb, who is conveniently asleep when they see him in his holding cell. Is this just coincidence, or are the writers hiding some sort of big reveal for the final episode? Could Christina be in a parallel timeline, or perhaps a timeline far in the future? Stubbs and Frankie stumble upon the dead body of William, where Stubbs tells her this guy is the reason they're all here. William did take over the original Westworld and wasn't the nicest of guys to Dolores. From there, Frankie is reunited with Caleb, but he initially thinks she's another trick sent by Hale. It's only when she tells him he called her Cookie because she'd always be sweet that he knows she's his real daughter. Cookie is what he called her last episode in his radio transmission, and it might be why she referred to herself as C. Caleb also wouldn't necessarily know what the adult version of her would look like. Frankie, on the other hand, is looking at a version of her dad that looks exactly like he was the day she last saw him. He hasn't aged because he's been copied over and over again. Maeve and Bernard head to the tower where they encounter it guarded by these riot drones. This scene was really weird. He lets Maeve attempt taking them down using her power, even though he has the decryption key to shut them down. Why would he do this? Is he still testing her? Bernard tells Maeve that no matter what they do, they can't save this world, but they can still save a tiny part of it. Will she stay and fight with him? This echoes his conversation at the beginning of the episode while in the simulation. Maeve merely smirks, hinting that this is a yes. Hale watches someone transcend, where we see the extracted pearl being put on this tall drone. We don't know where this pearl is being taken. Hale herself is ready to undertake this process, but she's interrupted by Maeve. Hale thinks it's a pity Maeve didn't join her. She could have been a part of all this, and Hale explains she never dug her out like Bernard did because Maeve had nothing to live for. Which isn't true at all. Maeve's priority has always been her daughter. We learn that this process of transcending is only a part of Hale's plan, and that in time those who rejected her new world will come to embrace it. But Maeve believes Hale hasn't risen above the humans. She is merely spinning on a wheel created by them, lost and confused. It goes back to Ford's story of the dog way back in season 1, in which a dog hell-bent on capturing a cat breaks free of his collar only to find himself lost and confused about what to do next. Just like Hale broke free and took control of the world, she is now lost and confused about what to do. Funny enough, after Ford tells this story to Old Bill, Bill toasts to quote the lady in the white shoes, which are the same color shoes Hale wears in the God is Bored scene. Maeve and Hale fight, culminating in Maeve's realization that there's no saving this world, but there is hope for the next one. It's interesting to note here that Maeve didn't abandon Bernard like she said she would in the simulation. She was with him till the end, and by the end I'm referring to her being shot by William. Not only does he kill Maeve, but also Hale, stating that it's time to play the game his way, survival of the fittest. Bernard has made it to the top of the tower where he's recording some sort of message. It's to someone who has to make a choice to play one final game, and the first step is to reach with their left hand and make sure they don't miss. It's all a bit cryptic, but it makes me think about that gun he placed at the Hoover Dam. We never saw what happened to it nor why he placed it there. Perhaps this person is supposed to find this gun and make sure when they fire it, they don't miss. I have some theories on this in my trailer spoiler section near the end. Bernard is interrupted by William, who tells him that Arnold, the park's co-creator, was so focused on finding meaning in the hosts he didn't have what it took to survive. The real Arnold died in the park decades ago, and it was said he had a special connection to the hosts. I wonder if this will be explored at all. William kills Bernard, telling him he's going to give the world the meaning they've been asking for, and this comes in the form of one last game. He cranks the decibel level on the audio transmitter, sending out a message to everyone to fight until only the strong survive. It makes me think about what Hale said a few episodes about there being a frequency that would make everyone go crazy. One thing I noticed that was really weird here is it suddenly goes from day to night. Check out this image here, and moments later, this one. It's just very odd, especially considering this background is likely green screen, and it would be an easy fix if it were a mistake. The last image we see of Bernard is him in Arnold's home, chasing after his son before the picture glitches. Christina's powers have somehow been overridden by the tones coming from the tower, and Teddy tells her the people can't see her. Teddy knows way more than he's letting on, telling her that this world is real, but she is not. Is Christina some sort of computer program? Is she a resurrected Rehoboam? The last time we saw her, she was connected to it. Or is she something else entirely? Teddy has answers and is likely saving them for next episode. Meanwhile, Frankie, Caleb, and Stubbs make their escape from New York as the city descends into chaos. In the process, Frankie is shot. But the episode ends on host William. Or maybe it's somehow real William. Honestly, the show really has a way of making the unbelievable real. He's back with his iconic black hat and suit as David Bowie's The Man Who Sold the World plays. The tower explodes in the background, putting an end to this chapter of Westworld. And now we get into our trailer spoiler section where we dive into scenes from the trailers we haven't seen. We still haven't seen this shot of Stubbs in New York. Maybe it occurs during his escape from New York. It seems the host version of William is here too. Notice his 2 intact hands so that we know it's not the real one. People don't seem to be going crazy here, so not exactly sure what's going on. We'll later see Stubbs at the grocery store, which looks a lot more in line with the chaos we saw at the end of the episode. Here, William shoots someone. This is likely not in a park, and judging by these other shots, it looks like chaos has swept across all the major cities. I get a California vibe here, but could be wrong. Here's someone who might be Christina Dolores, and in the reflection of their eye, you can see the Abernathy Ranch. William arrives at the Hoover Dam, where we can make out the portal in the center that Bernard opened. In episode 7, he stated he wanted to destroy everything, so it makes sense he wants to destroy the Sublime, which is housed inside. We also don't know much about what happened after Bernard opened that portal. Did he go back into the Sublime and make arrangements with other people in there? Was he the one who brought Teddy back? Remember that time in the Sublime works differently, and he could have done a lot of time in there before he came back and was reunited with Stubbs and Frankie. Now this is where things get really interesting. Here is Hale walking in the Transcendence room, but she's supposed to be dead. Did Hale have a contingency plan that involved her being recreated should she be killed, or is this a different parallel world? Maybe it's someone else in Hale's body. Honestly, my brain is going to explode. Maybe this shot has something to do with it. It's of an older host model. We've seen Dolores in this type of model in the past, but since it's a drone host opening this up, my guess is it could be Hale being reborn. That might explain her reappearance. We'll also see Hale later on at the Hoover Dam shooting at someone. Could her gun here be the same handgun Bernard left in the tunnel? She is walking down the same path we saw Maeve and Bernard go down at the beginning of the episode. If it is Bernard's gun, was it Hale he was talking to in that message? Do Bernard and the others have to team up to take down William? Speaking of which, it looks like she's being chased by him. If you pause on the right flame, you can also see these sparks coming out of the electrical wires up top, suggesting this place is being overloaded. Even the portal to the Sublime is acting up. But I also want to talk about this line in Bernard's message where he says, "Make sure not to miss." It makes me think of the scene where young Frankie is shooting at some tin cans and keeps missing until her father teaches her how to shoot. It would be a nice callback, and a message to Frankie makes a little more sense than Bernard sending it to Hale. We also see Clementine in the same rundown grocery store Stubbs was at. It looks like she faces off against Caleb in their escape from New York. I honestly don't know how they're going to wrap this all up, but I hope we get a satisfying ending that isn't too far out of left field. But knowing Westworld, we're in for one hell of a trip. But let me know what you thought of the episode and your theories for the finale. Be sure to like and subscribe, and for more bad takes, you can always follow me on Twitter and Instagram at ThinkStoryYT. Until next time, remember,
Culture doesn't survive. Cockroaches do.